Yo. Okay, for today, it's more about factoring, and our test on this will be next week. Obviously, next week is getting pretty close to when we have break. And so we have it, the test on Tuesday of next week, so about a week from now is when you get tested. Tested on what? On mostly factoring. So let's just start it off with factoring. I'm going to go off to the side. Everybody do the same and say x squared plus 6x minus 7. I'd like you to factor that. It's fine with me if you just write the answer down. Get going. This is one I just wrote off to the side. All right. Gonna go with Carolyn. How do you start? What goes here and here? All right. Then you're one of the people that probably needs a good review of factoring. This is really important. In fact, I have said this is the most important thing on the basic 20 is learning to factor. You got to know this stuff. So you start with an x and an x. Why? Because you're going to multiply them back out again later and do it this way, like you're going to distribute this, and it would have an x squared in it that way. Vivian, what do you think the signs should be? A plus and a plus, a minus and a minus, or a plus and a minus?
A plus and a minus.
You are correct. These signs always come next. And how do you decide? If your answer is negative, you got to have one negative. Because why? Because if you have two negatives, it would turn positive. And if you don't have any negatives, how would you get a negative? So often you're going to have a plus and a minus. That makes this number negative. Okay. And then last, we have to have a number that goes here and here that multiplies to 7. Now, a lot of people got this twisted. When you were taught this, they taught you to do two things at the same time. Don't. Just try to find something that multiplies to 7, and that's pretty easy. 1 and 7. It's got to be 1 and 7. So you just slap them in somewhere. It doesn't really matter, and you check and see if it worked. So if I put the 7 here, and I put the 1 here, did it work? Well, that makes me remember that you need to know how to multiply these things out. There's so many little math skills that depend on each other. This one, can you distribute this out? Everybody multiply this thing out. What's first?
X squared.
Good. What's second? Lots of options, but you'd pick one.
7x.
Minus 7x totally works. What's third? Plus 1x. What's the last thing? Well, okay, but what's the last number that we got to put? Minus 7, and then the parentheses. Okay. So then the final thing is x squared plus 7. Oh, wait, plus 7x? No, minus 6x. Now, as soon as you get the exact opposite of what you wanted, see, we wanted plus 6x, we got minus 6x. Then you can make the signs be the exact opposite of what they are. This one should have been positive, and this one should have been negative. I know some of you are thinking, but I could just switch the numbers around and do the same thing. Don't. I'm telling you, I'm teaching you a way that'll work for the harder ones too. When it's opposite of what you want, you use the opposite signs, but leave the numbers alone. You might think, I know it would work the other way. Yeah, but I'm teaching you a way that's going to work when the numbers are like this. When they're like that, you don't want to move the numbers in a situation like that. If you get the opposite of what you want, you always change the signs to be the opposite. And this one would become minus, and this one would become plus. Okay, I'm trying to get you ready for the really hard ones that come later. All right. So this is basically, quote is in here because this is a little bit like factoring. You got a question and you got an answer. Your question might be x squared minus 8x minus 9. And then there's your answer. And sometimes we give you the answer and sometimes we give you the question. And if you look backwards at the problem and say, okay, what do I want here so that I'll get that? It works pretty well. What would I want here and here, the signs, so that I get that? You can kind of keep looking back and seeing, okay, well, I needed a negative, so I'm going to use a plus and a minus. And then this one's got two choices. Olivia, what are some things I could put here and here that would make my 9?
9 and minus
1. 9 and a 1. What else is an option? Also multiplies to 9. 3 and 3. And only one of those, though, seems logical to make an 8. You get on a 9 and a 1, work pretty well to make an 8. Whereas a 3 and a 3, you can't make an 8 out of a 3 and a 3, right? So a 9 and 1 is the best call. And then I don't need you to be like a wizard of exactly where to put this. You can just slap in the 9 and the 1, and you put in the 9 somewhere, and you put in the 1 somewhere, and you check and see if it worked. After a while, you'll start to get like, you'll be burned enough time, you'll go, dang it, I did it wrong again. Like this one and this one, it makes positive 9 and negative 1 makes positive 8x, and that's the opposite of what I wanted again. And you might start realizing if this number's a big negative number, then make your bigger number negative. So I'm going to change this to a negative. And this to a positive. There, it worked. Now remember, what's the goal of this? It's to find the factors. That's a factor, that's a factor. What are the actual answers, though? X equals negative 1 and x equals 9. Why are those the answers? Because you always are trying to find the place where it hits the x-intercept. Another way to say it is this is the thing that makes it equal 0. So sometimes these are called zeros. They're zeros. They're also called roots. They're also called the x-intercepts. There's 4 names. Zeros, roots, x-intercepts, and the solutions. All right. So are we done? Oh, actually, we're getting close. There's only one more kind you have to get used to, and it goes like this. X squared, I'm wrong, not plus, sorry, minus 36. If I show you a couple like this, I feel like you're going to catch the pattern. X plus 6, x minus 6. How'd you know that? Well, because opposites like this will cancel and there's no middle term. Some kids will actually like this. It's like saying x squared plus 0x minus 36. Now, I don't know if you like that or not, but that's actually the same as the original question. And it just shows you that the middle term comes out to 0. But some of you will just go, oh, positive 6, negative 6 makes 36. I get it. Okay. So then what's x squared minus 9? Yes?
X plus 3, x minus 3.
See how quick that is? This is called the difference of squares. Why? Because that word means difference. Difference means minus sign. And that's a perfect square and that's a perfect square. Because x squared is obviously something squared. And 9 is obviously something squared also. Okay. So I'm going to up the difficulty level a little bit. Factor it. This time I want to get it so that 3 or 4 people are able to do this and raise their hand and aren't afraid. Yes?
X plus 12 and x minus 12.
And let's say there was a kid who was arguing with you and like, no, it's this. How could you prove you are right? Because that's the nice thing about factoring is you can prove it.
12x cancels.
These two cancel, yep.
12 times minus 12 is minus 144.
And that makes, these two make the 144, negative 144, yep. And these two
Make the x.
make the x squared, so yeah, it works, and you know you're right. Okay, so what are the solutions, the roots, the zeros, the x-intercepts? They're x equals 12 and x equals negative 12. Just make sure you get that this is different than factoring. Factoring's good, but it's a means to an end. The reason we do it is so we can get the answers. So that's what's coming later, right? First we just kind of make you factor a bunch of things, but then we make you solve the equation, and then that's the where you set this equal to 0, and then these two things would be the answers. Okay, let's see if there's any that you can't do at this point. What if it's weird like this? There's only two numbers. Well, then you just ask yourself, what goes into both of those numbers? 5 does. What else goes into both of those numbers? X. 5x then is what goes outside. And then you only have one parenthesis. This is definitely factoring, but it's definitely different. And then what will go on the inside? 3x plus 2. How do we know you're right? Because you can multiply it out. 15x squared. 5x times 2, 10x. Yay, I know it's right. All right? I'm going to give you one more like that, because these do confuse people. After doing a bunch of normal ones, and then all of a sudden you come across like x squared plus 16x, and you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. It's because you're thinking it has to be two parentheses, and it doesn't. Just one parenthesis. Truckee, what would go on the front of that? What is in both of these?
X.
Yep. So then what goes inside?
4.
Yeah, there's a 4 in here, but wait, what about this spot? Because remember, I got to go this times this to make this.
That'd be x plus 4.
There we go. Okay.
4x.
No, not x plus 4.
16.
There we go. 16. I had some people looking sideways up at the screen like, what? I just didn't even see it. I trusted you. All right. How about this one? 2x squared minus 16x. This will be different. Very similar, but different. Noah, what comes out of both of them? Yep. And Lydia, what would be left around each side of the minus sign?
1x minus 8.
X minus 8. You got it. Now remember, if this was set equal to 0, then I'd have two answers. X equals 8, because get how if I put an 8 here, it makes it equal 0. And the other one is x equals 0. Why? Because if I put a 0 here, it cancels everything and makes it equal 0. So there's two solutions, 0 and 8. Okay, I feel like you're in good shape. So sometimes they change the letter just to shake things up. But I think you could factor this blue page yourself right now. And I think you could do it in 5 minutes. So that's the last thing I'm going to ask you to do before we move to the homework. Everybody find this blue page and try to factor it in less than 5 minutes. Okay, let's see how you did on that first one. Dice of Destiny. Roll 4. Person 3. Ryan, that's you.
I got k plus 2 and k plus 1.
K plus 2, K plus 1. And prove it to me. How would you prove you were right?
Factor it out.
So if I, technically it's called multiplying it out. So K squared, what do the outside inside make?
K squared plus 1k plus 2k.
Which makes 3K. Keep going.
And plus 2.
That's it. I know he's right now. Cool. You guys should be able to do that for yourself. It's one of the only tests where you should walk out of the test knowing I got them all right. Because you check it. And if you didn't have it right, you just keep trying different numbers till you find it. All right, how about this next one? Dice of Destiny. It's row 5. That means it's you, Kai.
R minus 5 and R minus 5.
And I have two negatives. That makes it positive 25. Yup. And I checked the outside and the inside, because usually that's where there's a problem, if there is any problem. And my outside and my inside make negative 5R, and another negative 5R, that makes negative 10R. He did it right. Nice job. This one. Row 4, fourth person. Josh, that's you.
X plus.
This is a Y.
Y plus 2, and then y minus 16.
That does make negative 32. Does this really make, it's negative 16 and positive negative 14? Yup, he's got it. I checked him. How about this one? Row 4. It just keeps pounding on row 4. Ryan, I want you again.
X plus 12, X minus 1.
I'm using W, but plus 12 minus 1, checking the outside and the inside especially, and that makes positive 11, and you're right. Row 5. Kai, that's you. I'll help you through it. We got T and T. Would you agree, since it's negative here, there's only one choice on signs? What's it got to be?
Plus and a minus.
A plus and a minus. Good. And then numbers. How many numbers make 42? Well, there's a fair number of them. But I'll give you this hint. 6 times something.
6 times 7.
Yep. 6 and a 7. And I know already that I did that right. Kai, how could you be sure that I did it right?
I'm multiplying it out.
And these two here make a total of what?
1T.
Yep, and that is that. And so, yay, I've got it. And the last melon. Actually, let's just call him Kiernan. What did you think? And I like this part. You checked it, which was smart. He was like, I might be missing something. But so he went off and graphed it. And what happened is, when he saw the graph, he knew it didn't factor because it was up like this and it didn't have any x-intercepts. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. That was a smart way to tell. Since it doesn't touch the x-axis, then it can't factor. That was pretty smart. So that one's called something, though. There's a name for it. And this is what you write. It's called prime. You guys have heard of prime numbers, like 7, right? Because there's no way to make it into two things multiplied other than 1. So 1 times 7 obviously makes 7, but you can't break a 7 up into like 3 times, 2.5 or whatever. You got these whole numbers. So this, it won't break up into two things, so then it's called prime. All right. We already factored these, but they decided to throw in the 0x just to see if it messed you up. I already know the answer. Do you? Beckett, what'd you get?
X squared minus 25. Or, well, X squared.
Yes, x squared minus 25 is right. And then?
Plus 5 and then X squared minus 5. Produce X plus 5. Yeah, no.
That's, I know what you meant. That, yes. Okay, and how about this one? Nice room, I bet you can do this. Don't have to say the whole thing, just go right to the answer. X and X.
Minus 9 and then X plus 5.
Yes. Oop, 9, yep. All right, last one. Stella, what do you get? I bet you can do it quick, though. Do you know what the square root of 49 is? Like, what times what makes 49? It is. So what do you think I should put here and here? You got it. That's all there is to it. What about the 0x? That doesn't really exist. They're just showing you that the middle term would be 0, but you can just like make it disappear. All right. So this is just an official like description of this kind of factoring, which I hope you'd all be good at anyway. X plus 10, x minus 10. It's called difference of squares. So there's a worksheet. I bet you can finish this thing before class is up and drop it in the Dropbox and just be done for the day. Find the worksheet that's posted for today's date